Good day, students. Welcome to Theme 1, Introduction to Project Quality. You will see that the slides that you guys built have been summarized at the bottom of this presentation, and thank you to all of you for doing a great job. You will see that some of the slides that you made I could just reuse. So for that I'm very grateful. But this presentation gives you everything that you need to study for project quality, the introduction to project quality. All right, this is a quite theoretical part of quality, and unfortunately you just have to learn the theory. You need to define the concept of quality, discuss key quality terms and concepts, understand and describe quality philosophies of key quality gurus, and then understand and explain key quality models. And please look in the study guide. I have put a whole list of possible questions for the tests and the exams, and I will be using those questions for the tests and the exams. So make sure that you can answer those questions. So here are the resources that you use in this chapter. The internet resources are of course important, and those links that I gave you in the on my tutor are important. Okay, so the themes for this subject are quality in general, and that's what we are busy with now. Project quality planning, project quality assurance, project quality and control, ISO 9000, and then project qualitative risk planning. So when we talk about quality in general, the first thing we need to know is what is quality. Then there are key quality terms and concepts that we need to identify. And lastly, the quality philosophies and models that we're going to talk about. So, issues of quality have always been with mankind. Here are some interesting historical quality issues. So, the Code of Hammurabi from 2150 BC, so that's before Christ. If a builder has built a house for a man, and his work is not strong, and the house falls in and kills the owner, that builder shall be slain. So you can see that even those years there were safety and quality requirements on buildings. Phoenician inspectors eliminated any repeated violations of quality standards by chopping off the hand of the maker of the defective product. So, so fortunately these days we don't chop off each other's hands anymore for poor quality. But you can see that quality has always been seen as something key and something important to people, especially when it came to buildings. So what is project quality? So project quality has different meanings to different people. Some feel that it's performance to requirements. Others say it is meeting quality criteria. And then still others talk about stakeholder needs and expectations and say that it's all about meeting the stakeholder needs and expectations. So let's look at quality from a few perspectives. So from the perspective of the project manager, quality means meeting the needs and expectations, and look here, both expressed and implied, of customers and project stakeholders. So we know that the product of our project is quality if we have met the needs and expectations of our customers and project stakeholders. Quality for the client can have many different facets. So it can be value for money, it can be acceptable, useful life, ease of use, reliability, maintainability, and then the cost and effort of ownership. And customers will decide on using these different issues of quality in different ways depending on who they are and what they are buying. So somebody who maybe wants a very flashy car is not that interested in value for money, but because the car is very flashy and very fast, it is easy to use, and because it's made by Ferrari, it's probably reliable and maintainable. But the cost and effort of ownership is maybe high because you need to pay a lot to have the car repaired. Whereas, for example, in our household, we have gone through, I think, about 5 or 6 kitchen slices in the last 3 years. Because the first thing that we wanted value for money, and so we went and we used to buy the cheapest food processor that we could find. But eventually we realized that because it was the cheapest, it didn't really have an acceptable useful life, because the motors would burn out within 3 months of purchase. And so that's why we then decided to rather spend a little bit more. Okay, so maybe the short-term value for money isn't there, but the cost and effort of ownership is lower, because in the long term we're paying less because we have a reliable, easy to use a food processor now. So I hope that explains quality for the client to you. And then for the quality practitioner, they view quality in terms of the ISO definitions, and remember later on in the course we will be doing the ISO. They want to expand the business, so they want to improve quality in the organization so that the business can expand, and also for them it is a career, so they are very serious about quality and very serious about making sure that the best quality is done in the organization, because their reputation is on the line. Okay, so another definition of quality is it is the realized performance divided by the expectations. So you can see that the higher the realized performance and the lower the expectations, the better the quality. And so if we go back to the definition of what quality is for the project manager, which is meeting the needs and expectations of the customer, you can see that we have to manage the expectations, because the better the expectations are in line with the realized performance, the better the perception of the customer is going to be regarding quality. And in the final analysis, quality cannot be managed. Quality is the result of good management. And there will be more about that in the slides that follow. Here's quite an interesting evolution of quality. So you can see that in the pre-industrial era, exterior finish was what was perceived as quality. So if your car had a beautiful paint job, that was quality. Then it moved to being more producer oriented, and so it became about meeting specifications. Then during World War II, it changed to fitness for purpose, so it can do what it intended to do. Then it became compliance with requirements, and this became but these were the producer-oriented requirements. Then it became giving users what they want, so that's becoming more user-orientated. Then it is giving users what they need, and this is a longer-term orientation, because this is understanding essentially what the need of the user is. And then the last, where we are at now, is quality as value for money. So the user will choose which product they want based on how they perceive the value for money of the product. Oh, and here is just a positive proof of global warming. So this was quality in underwear in the 18th century, and this is quality in underwear in 2006. All right, so given the fact that we are becoming more user-centric in our perception of quality, you can see that quality is a people business. It's about understanding what people want and meeting the needs of people. And it's also a paradigm shift for management, because where in the past, as long as we met our own requirements, we now have quality. At present, we have to meet the needs of our customers before we can say that it is quality. And you can see that it requires good management, and it's about satisfying reasonable needs. Remember that at the in the final analysis, you can never please everybody. So it's about understanding what are the reasonable needs of customers and being able to meet and satisfy those reasonable needs. But then also remember, there will always be continuous improvement as part of quality. So what are reasonable needs today might change tomorrow. So if I take the example of cell phones, the reasonable needs 20 years ago when we first got the brick cell phones was that we wanted a mobile device with which we can make phone calls. Now that reasonable need has evolved and has been continuously improved, where a reasonable need for a cell phone is now a smartphone. So I don't only need to be able to make calls. I want to be able to send SMSs. I want to be able to download apps. My son, for example, just upgraded his phone because his previous phone had Android version 2 on it, and he couldn't upgrade the phone to Android version 4. So he needed to upgrade his phone and buy a new phone because there was an app he wanted to use that could only run on Android version 4. And the last thing is that quality is a lifelong feature, and it's also a lifelong feature of a brand. So if a brand has a reputation for poor quality, it is quite difficult to change that reputation. And so organizations have to understand that they need to deliver quality in order to get follow-up business. And then, unfortunately, quality cannot be divorced from emotion. If you think about something like Apple, there are people that love Apple and there are people that hate Apple. And there's no reasoning with either two on either part of the spectrum, because it is an emotional decision that they've taken to be either attached or opposed to the brand. And that's why it's about satisfying perceived needs, but it also is a carefully planned science. So it is, and it has to be, the product of careful thought, effort, and planning. So quality doesn't just happen. One has to commit to it and one has to plan for it. And then at the bottom here you can see quality does not come into being spontaneously. If you haven't put thought into it, you are not going to get quality. And that's why as project managers we learn principles of good project planning, because essentially that is where quality starts for our projects. Management have to understand that quality means that we will have satisfied customers, and that means that customers will return for future business. So if we're out there to make a quick buck and then disappear, that's fine, but then we're only going to make a quick buck. But if we're in business for the long term, then we have to make sure that we satisfy our customers. And also, profitable organizations mean that we can pay our people bonuses and that we can have money left over to do social upliftment. And sustainable business means job satisfaction and career opportunities, because there's nothing worse for the people working for us if they perceive the business not to be sustainable, and if every month they are worrying whether their salaries are going to get paid, and if they cannot see that they can make a career in the organization where they are. So quality has quite deep implications, because a lot of people are not motivated if they are working for an organization where they perceive quality to not be important. Because deep down, most of us want the best and want to do our best, and we are motivated in our work environments by that. And so if we're working for an organization where, you know, just the bare minimum is good enough, we become demotivated. Okay, and it requires good management of the customer at all levels. So if we are an internal department doing work for another internal department, we have to satisfy that customer. If we are an internal department working with external customers, we also have to satisfy that customer. And very often in organizations, internal departments doing work for other internal departments do not always catch that vision, that what they are doing and the fact that they have to deliver quality is very important. The other thing is, it's about profitability in the long term, because quality costs money. We can't deny that, because understanding what quality is and investing in quality, which means training people, making sure that people have the correct skills, making sure that the correct materials are used, that the test equipment that is required is in place, etc., costs money. So we can be profitable in the long term by investing that money, or we can have a short-term focus and just say every quarter we want to smash and grab as much profit as possible. And the problem with that is we then don't invest. And if we don't invest, then we don't get long-term profitability. And management also has to understand that poor quality might lead to avoidance of loss in the short term, but it translates into big loss in the long term. And the other thing is that you can also lose opportunities if you are delivering poor quality, because remember that return business is dependent on quality. And so if you are not delivering quality products or projects, you're going to lose opportunities for future business. Right, then there is a important definition in quality that we need to talk about, and that is the definition of fitness for purpose. So the product or end item must be fit for its intended purpose in terms of performance. So let's talk about a motor car again. If a person is buying a Ferrari, they expect the Ferrari to be able to accelerate within a certain time period from 0 to 120 kilometers per hour. But they also expect that if they've accelerated from 0 to 120 kilometers per hour and they've hit a tree, that they will survive the accident. They want reliability, so they don't want to break down next to the road in their new red Ferrari. That must be like really embarrassing if you've just paid all this money and a little beetle has to stop and help you repair your Ferrari. Ease of handling is, of course, part of fit for the intended purpose. Maintainability. So I don't want to have to buy a new Ferrari if one of my tires gets flat. There must be a logistical support system, which is the next point, in place that can help me to maintain my Ferrari. And then the last thing, which is becoming more and more important in our day and age, is environmental safety. You know, many years ago, we didn't really worry about environmental safety. But these days, an organization will get a bad name by transgressing laws, but also by not doing due diligence and making sure that their products are environmentally safe. Okay, so now let's look at some of the definitions and concepts of quality in projects. So according to the PMBok, project quality management encompasses the processes and activities of the performing organization that determine quality policies, objectives, and responsibilities so that projects satisfy the needs for which it is undertaken. Okay, so you can see project quality is about satisfying the needs, and it's about making sure that we have the policies, that we have the objectives, and the responsibilities. So you can see there are three key issues over there. And it's also about the implementation of the organization's quality management system in the project context. So a lot of organizations will, for example, have ISO certification. And when it then comes to projects, we don't reinvent the wheel again for every project. What our project quality plan says is how are we applying the organizational policies and standards to this specific project. And it ensures that project requirements, including product requirements, are met and validated. All right, so you can see it's got the planning and deciding on the policy aspects in it, and then it also goes right down to the final validation of the project or product. Something that we need to understand when we talk about quality is that there is a difference between quality and grade. So quality is the degree to which a set of inherent characteristics fulfill requirements, whereas grade refers to deliverables having the same functional use but different technical characteristics. And low grade is not necessarily a problem, but low quality is. So to make that more concrete, if you remember in the very first lecture, we spoke about these examples of how do we define quality for a house, a motor car, a shirt. And basically what we said is that this very fancy house would be an A grade house, but it wouldn't necessarily be less quality than the F grade house. Okay, as long as both of them meet the needs of the user and the requirements of the user. Then there's another definition that we need to be aware of in quality, and that's the difference between precision and accuracy. So precision is a measure of exactness. So if we think about a target, precision is about whether we hit close to the bull's eye with every shot that we fire. All right? So we're not hitting all over the dartboard. We are close to the bull's eye every time we throw the dart. Precise or consistent means that we don't hit the bull's eye, but we are always hitting in exactly the same place. So that means that we are consistent. But at the end of the day, quality is about being accurate and about being precise. So we need to hit the bullseye, and we have to hit the bullseye consistently. So the quality determinants of a successful project are finish on time, ensure a continuous flow of work, minimize changes. I think that is a very, very important quality principle for project management, is that you do not allow the project to run you. There you can see is that one. But you run the project and you minimize scope creep as much as possible. Good communication, increased status information. So communicating and capturing status information and communicating that is part of good communication on a project. Meaningful and timely reports, clear requirements and deliverables. So this is about communicating the status of the project and the goals of the project properly. Then knowing the schedule and the cost. So knowing that there's a plan, and then also knowing where we are actually when we compare to the plan. Defined accountability, responsibility, and authority. Okay, so who is accountable to do that? Who is responsible, and who has the authority? And if you remember last semester when we spoke about the RAM, the responsibility allocation matrix, that is where one defines accountability, responsibility, and authority for a project. And then the questions of who does what, when, and how much. So how much is about when is it good enough? And remember that in our project charter, we already want to define what are the measures of success of the project. So how much is good enough? And then the last thing is good integration. So it doesn't help that we have a beautiful, for example, layout on the cell phone, but the back end of the cell phone where the calls happen and the SMSs get processed and so on fall over every time we try and use them. So all parts of the deliverables of the project have to be integrated well in order for us to have quality. So these are mostly things that we as project managers have control over and that we can manage on our projects. Alright, so now we get to some project quality definitions. Customer satisfaction. Okay, so in order to understand customer satisfaction, we have to understand, evaluate, define, and manage the requirements of the customer so that expectations are met. So remember when we had one of the definitions of quality earlier on in the slideshow, we said that quality is the realized benefits over the expectations. So the better we manage the expectations, the better quality we're going to deliver at the end of the day. And this requires a combination of conformance to requirements. So remember that conformance to requirements is the top of the line, that's meeting the performance requirements. And then the other thing is fitness for use. So the product or service needs to satisfy the real needs, and those are the expectations that are under the line. And very often in projects, we get the conformance to requirements in the sense that we meet what we think and what we defined up front as the needs of the customer. But then at the end of the day, the project fails because we don't meet the fitness for use requirement. All right, and then one of the principles of quality, which we will talk about later as well when we talk about the different quality gurus, is that for quality, we have to prevent bad quality rather than inspect good quality in. So quality should be planned, designed, and built into, not inspected into the project's management or the project's deliverables. So we cannot at the end of the project now inspect quality in. The cost of preventing mistakes is generally much less than the cost of correcting mistakes when they are found by inspection or during usage. So prevention is better than inspection, because remember that when we have got to the point where we are inspecting the products of the project and we find a mistake, we now have to go and rework it, and we have to scrap some of the material, and so that is immediately wasted cost, and that is a high cost of non-conformance to quality, which we want to avoid. And then again, quality is management responsibility. So success requires the participation of all members of the team, but management retains within its responsibility for quality a related responsibility to provide suitable resources at adequate capacities. So if poor quality is happening because we don't have the resources at our disposal, which often happens, it becomes the responsibility of management to fix that problem. All right, so let's now get to the quality gurus and the summary of your input to this presentation. Okay, so we're going to, in this course, talk about 4 main quality gurus. The first one is Juran. And Juran said, whatever you do, make sure it improves society. Don't just do it for the sake of profit. And you can see he is he was quite a thought leader in those days, because social responsibility and the fact that we have to give back to society and so on have only really become key management concepts in the last number of years. So Juran's quality definition is fitness for use in terms of design, conformance, availability, safety, and field use. So you can see that at the end of the day, whatever we produce must be fit for use in terms of how we design it, in terms of how the final product conforms to that design, in terms of how available the product is. And remember, availability relates to reliability and maintainability, because availability says that when we need to use the product, it is there for us at our disposal. So it needs to be maintained and it needs to be reliable. And then safety and field use. So when I take it out to use where I intend using it, it must fulfill its purpose. Maybe just a little story over here. When I was working at the CSR, one of the things I worked on was the use of ground penetrating radar for detection of landmines. Because the problem with today's landmines is that they are mostly plastic, and so you can't pick them up with regular metal detectors anymore because they have no metal signature anymore. And landmines are a huge problem worldwide, because after the war, the troops pull out, but the mined fields still remain behind. And places like Mozambique are completely covered in mines. And in Mozambique, a further problem is that there were some maps of where the mines were buried, but then after the severe floods that happened a number of years ago, those mines were moved by the movement in the ground because of the floods. And so it becomes very, very difficult and almost impossible to find the mines. Anyway, so we were investigating the use of ground penetrating radar to try and solve the problem, because the theory was that you should be able to detect something plastic under the ground using radar, because it works in a different spectrum to visible light. Anyway, and our conclusions at the end of the day at the CSR was that at that stage, ground penetrating radar was not fit for use because of the fact that the environment in which you are busy trying to detect the landmines is very noisy. So there are rocks, there are maybe plastic bottle caps, and in the African environment there are bushes, and so to actually detect the landmines, you need a very clean environment. So I went to a conference after we had done this work at the CSR and come to that conclusion. I went to a radar conference, and it was very interesting because there were these professors from a university in the UK that were making presentations on how promising the use of ground penetrating radar was for finding landmines. And the problem is that they were using a sand pit in their laboratory. So the sand was all uniform, and it was like beach sand, and they knew exactly what the characteristics of the sand was, and then they buried the landmines, and then every time they could find the landmines. But fitness for use is saying no, because when we take it out into the field, we have a bush, we have an African environment, we have grass, we have trees, and they didn't understand that fitness for use meant that their very fancy paper at the conference was actually null and void. Okay, so Juran's quality trilogy has three, well, a trilogy is three, so it has three main components: quality planning, quality control, and quality improvement. So quality planning starts with identifying the customers, then determining the needs of those customers, and then to develop a product that can respond to the need with the optimal product features. So again, here is the concept that you can't make everybody happy all of the time. So you have to optimize and prioritize the needs and come up with the optimal features within your budget to meet what the customer wants. Then quality control is to prove that the process can produce the product under operating conditions with minimal inspection. So it's about making sure that our process is repeatable and that our process at the end of the day gives us accuracy and precision. So we don't just want to hit the target, we want to hit the target every time. And if we can do that, then we need minimal inspection. And then quality improvement is about developing the process which is able to produce the product, but then you optimize the process. So you're always going back and looking at the process and seeing where you can improve the process. Then the next guru that we want to talk about is Crosby. He said that quality is the result of a carefully constructed cultural environment. It has to be the fabric of the organization, not part of the fabric. So you can see that an organization has to have a culture of quality where everyone in the organization understands their place in making sure that the customer's needs are met. So his definition of quality is conformity to specifications set forth by management and not some vague concept of goodness. These specifications are not arbitrary either. They must be set according to customer needs and wants. So you can see he emphasizes that management has to determine what the specifications are that we need to conform to. And his philosophy is conformance to quality is conformance to requirements. Quality comes from prevention, not detection. The standard for quality is 0 defects, and quality is measured by the price of non-conformance. So conformance to requirements is that there is clarity and agreement about the requirements upfront, which have to be established by the customer and the supplier. And then quality is meeting those exact requirements without a defect. Quality can be established only before the task is performed. So planning, we have to plan in quality. After a task is finished, only analysis can be done. So at the core of quality is practice. So we have to plan, and then we have to do. Then we have to plan, then we have to do. Thus, we must learn to think prevention in order to prevent defects. And then 0 defects is the standard for quality. And 0 defect is not perfection. It is meeting the agreed requirements. So remember that until we get to nirvana or heaven or wherever we are going to end up, there will be no perfection. But we need to meet the agreed requirements. So the first step in quality is to clarify the requirements of the customer and agree to meet them to exact specifications. Defect in quality is always with respect to those specifications or those requirements. And our aim should be to do the right thing the first time, every time. So we don't want scrap, we don't want rework, we don't want to inspect and then fix. We want to do things the right the first time. And then quality is measured by the cost of non-conformance. And the cost of non-conformance includes rework, scrap, loss of business, because we have now lost the follow-up customer because of our poor quality, work that we have to do under warranty where we now have to go and repair something that broke, and then any liabilities. Remember our historical lesson in the beginning where if the building collapses, they kill the builder. Well, we don't go to those extremes anymore, but if the building collapses and you kill people, you can end up going to jail. And so those are the more severe liabilities that we can face. But if you think about a car manufacturer, and I mean, these things happen on a regular basis where we hear that a car manufacturer had to withdraw vehicles from the market and fix something because they found that the head explodes or whatever. You can see all the liabilities involved in that, because firstly, for a car manufacturer to get to that point where they withdraw, it means that very bad things have happened, and they have been found liable, and it has been found that their product was responsible for the accident or for the problem. And so you can see that it costs organizations a lot of money if we do not conform to quality. Right, then our third quality guru is Taguchi. He said quality is measured as the total loss to society caused by a project. So you can see this is very high level and philosophical. So if my product causes loss to society, then it means that it is a bad product. So his definition is that quality is minimizing the loss caused by a product. 2, the performing organization. So the performing organization doesn't want scrap and rework. The customer wants something that can be maintained and doesn't need repair too often. And then also to society. So our products must be safe, our products mustn't cause pollution, they must be environmentally friendly, etc., etc. And any deviation from the target value of quality characteristics results in an extra cost to some segment of the society. So it's not about maximizing the profit of the performing organization at the cost to the customer or society. And so you can see that this is very much part of the modern trend of how we see responsible business and how we see the green economy, and that we need to do what is socially responsible and the best for the planet. So his philosophy is quality must be designed in, it cannot be inspected later. So you can see that relates back to the philosophies of the two previous gurus. Continuous quality improvement and cost reduction are necessary to be competitive. Quality improvement requires continual and repeated reduction of variation. So remember, variation relates to our accuracy. So if we are not accurate, we can't repeat the same thing and do it properly. Product and process design can have an important impact on product quality and cost. So there again, you can see that the emphasis is on the planning side. So you need to design quality in. Then Deming said, it's not enough to do your best. You must know what to do and then do your best. All right. So again, you can see the concept of planning coming out there. You need to know what you have to do. So here's the definition of quality is that it's a relative term that changes depending on the customer's need. All right, so remember when we spoke about the cell phone, where the need of the customer 20 years ago was just to make a call, and the need of the customer today is a completely different kettle of fish, because we all need smartphones now. All right, so Deming's 14-point plan for total quality management are create constancy of purpose. So the whole organization must know what the purpose is. Adopt the new philosophy. So change the culture in the organization. Cease inspection and require evidence. So evidence of planning, evidence of knowing, evidence that you know what you're going to do before you do your best. Improve the quality of supplies. So the input must be good, because remember, garbage in, garbage out. Continuously improve production. Train and educate all employees. So remember, previously we were talking about that management must make the resources available. Part of making the resources available is making sure that the employees are educated and they know what they're supposed to do. Supervisors must help people, drive out fear, and this is the fear of failure. We will fail and people will fail. So people must not be scared to fail, because if they're scared to fail, they'll also be scared to try. Eliminate boundaries, and here he was specifically talking about boundaries between departments, where we throw things over the wall and we say, no, this is not our responsibility, so we're not going to make sure that it works. So the whole project team have to work together to ensure quality, and they shouldn't pass the buck to somebody else. If they pick up a problem in quality, it should be discussed in the team, and there should not be boundaries in responsibility. Eliminate the use of slogans. I think this one is quite interesting. But so I think what he's trying to say is that quality is not about having posters on your wall saying that we are striving for zero defect. Quality is about actually changing the culture. Eliminate numerical standards. Let people be proud of their work. Encourage self-improvement, and you can see that relates to train and educate. So if you give the opportunities for training and education, people will take that as long as they are encouraged to improve themselves. And then commit to ever improving quality. So we are never there. We always have to continue improving our quality. Right, then we have some quality models. So the first one is total quality management. And you will see total quality management starts with Deming's 14-point plan. But the model that we will use for total quality management is this one, where you have the 4 P's: planning, performance, people, and process. And then the 3 C's: culture, communication, and commitment. And so the 4 P's are the hard management necessities: planning, development and deployment of policies and strategies, setting up appropriate partnerships and resources, and designing in quality. So again, there's the concept of the input, the resources that we use must be quality. And we must plan and we must design. So performance, so we should have a performance measurement framework that includes self-assessment, audits, review, and benchmarking. Processes, there must be an understanding of the processes, must be driven by management. We must design the processes and redesign the processes. There must be a quality management system, and it must be driven by continuous improvement. And then people. So it starts with management, who then have to make a culture change in the organization, which will then lead to teamwork, and teams will then not just communicate inside the teams, but will communicate to the rest of the organization, so that you have innovative learning. So you can see that a lot of these principles are things that we strive for anyway in projects. You know, the lessons learned, the fact that we want to work in teams, the fact that communication is important. And if you relate it back to, for example, project maturity, you will see that if you are a level 5 optimized process organization, you are busy with innovative learning and continuous improvement. Then the soft outcomes that need to be integrated into the hard management necessities is commitment. And the commitment must not just be from the people, it must be from top management. Then there's culture. So there must be a philosophy of 0 errors, to change the culture, to be right the first time, to eliminate waste. So if we have a culture of, anything goes, and it doesn't really matter whether we do it right the first time, and we don't give people enough time to do things because, we'll always have time to fix it, then we are not going to be able to implement a total quality management system, because we need to change the culture of the organization to be able to deliver quality. And then the last C is communications. So improve communication between the functions by managing the process. And here you can see is also that elimination of boundaries. So the functions, the functional areas must communicate with each other in order to make sure that quality happens in the organization. Right, then the next model is the plan, do, check, act cycle. So it starts here with plan. So we plan what to do and how to do it. Then we do. So we then implement what we've planned. And we don't just stop there. We then check to see whether things happened according to plan. And if things didn't happen according to plan, we then act to improve it. Okay, so here is the description in more detail of each of the steps. So plan is to establish the objectives and processes necessary to deliver results in accordance with customer requirements and the organization's policies. Then do is to implement the processes. Check is to monitor and measure the processes and products against policies, objectives and requirements for the products, and report the results. So you can see that the check is done against the plan. And then act is to take actions to continually improve process performance. Right, then Six Sigma. Now, the first thing that we need to understand when we talk about Six Sigma is, what is Six Sigma? Okay, so if we are looking at a process and we say that okay, let's say we are looking at the marks of students, and I say that I would like all my students to get 60%. All right, so then the mu over here becomes 60%. So if I have a 1 sigma deviation, it means that only 68% of my students will get 60%. All right, so in other words, if I have 100 students in my class, only 68 of them will get 60%. So some of the others will get above 60% and some of them will get below 60%. All right, and of course, what I'm worried about most is that they shouldn't be getting below 60%. But when we talk about the quality of a process, we want to control it so that we are accurate and precise, if you remember the definitions of accurate and precise. All right, so now if I have a deviation of 2 sigma, it means that 95.45% of my students will get 60%. All right, so that means that there's only there's less than 5% of students that will not get 60%. Okay, so now you can see I'm becoming a lot more accurate, and it's maybe bad news for the students that want to do very well, but it's good news for the students that don't do so well. Then if I'm at 3 sigma in the class of 100 students, basically 99.73, so all of them will be getting 60%. Right, so let's take that class and we make it there's 1,000 students in the class. So that means that 997 students will get 60%. All right, and only 3 students, or points whatever, but if we just look at the at 7 as the significant digit, so only 3 students will not get 60%. Right, and then 6 sigma, there is the figure for 6 sigma. So that means that 99.985% of students will get 60%. So if we go to that fictitious class of 1,000, basically all students will get 60%. So if we make the class 10,000, then we will still have 9,999 students that will be getting 60%. Well, 0.58, so I'm sorry, 0.85. So actually it still means that 100% of our students will get 68. So if we go to 100,000 students, there will be half a student that will not be getting 60%. Okay, so do you see that 6 sigma is a very, very tall ask, because it basically means 0 defect. All right, so the process that we use for 6 sigma, so in order to get to 0 defects, people have now defined the process of 6 sigma of how do we improve our processes so that we can get to that 0 defect. So the model that we will be using is this one. So it's define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. So you can see it speaks to the plan, do, check, act cycle, because plan is over there, and the check is part of the measure and the analyze, and then the act is part of the improve, but what they've basically added is the control. So define is identify projects for process and organize the resources for improvement. Then measure, set the baseline performance and validate the measurements. So we need to know what we're going to measure, and we then need to measure it, and we have to validate that our measurements are correct. Then analyze, set objectives and identify the source of variation. Then improve, prioritize the causes of variation. Okay, so see, prioritize. So we can't fix everything at once. We have to focus on one thing at a time to improve. Establish the relationship between the input and the output variables, and then we can decide what we want to improve. And then control, implement the strategy and ensure sustainability, and then indicate lessons learned. All right, so those are the 6 steps of the Sigma process that you need to know. All right, then just in time. Now, just in time is basically a production strategy, and it strives to improve a business's return on investment by reducing in-process inventory and associated carrying cost. Because if I am building furniture and I have a warehouse which costs me money where I keep the wood that I use for building the furniture. Firstly, the wood that I keep there is lost to me because I can only sell it once I've converted it into a product, into a table, for example. And I also have to pay for the warehouse where I keep the wood. So just in time says that instead of having a warehouse where I keep all this wood, I have reliable suppliers that will supply me the wood just before I need to make the table. So just-in-time focuses on continuous improvement and can improve a manufacturing organization's return on investment, quality and efficiency. Because if I have quality suppliers that supply me with things just in time, I can be more efficient and I need to outlay less capital in order to make my business work. But then, of course, if my suppliers let me down, then that compromises my quality, because then I can't meet the user's need. So cooperation with a value chain perspective. So the value chain is about making sure that my suppliers can supply when I need it and that I then can supply to my customer. Respect for people at all levels. Quality at the supplier. Just enough resources. So I need just enough resources to get my job done. Continuous improvement, and of course I have to take a long-term perspective, because if a supplier charges me a little bit more but they are reliable, then I would rather use them, because in the long term I can build a relationship with them and I can take a long-term profitability perspective. Whereas if I just want to make a profit in the short term, I might use the cheaper supplier, but that then will jeopardize my name, because I will then not be able to supply quality anymore at the end of the day. Right, and then the last model is Kaizen. So Kai means change and Zen means better. So change for the better. So Kaizen is a continuous improvement that is based on certain guiding principles. Good processes bring good results. Go see for yourself to grasp the current situation. So in other words, understand the process, understand what is currently being done, and go and investigate that yourself. Don't send a consultant to go and do it. You understand it. Speak with data, manage by facts. All right, so this is not management based on perceptions or based on what people are telling us. It's based on what the hard facts say on paper. Take action to contain and correct root causes of problems. Work as a team. And Kaizen is everybody's business. So Kaizen means we listen to everybody, we give everybody the opportunity to give an input, and that is where things like quality circles, where everybody in the organization is involved to solve quality problems, etc., comes from. All right, so that is basically the end of the introduction to to quality management, or quality management in general. Please note that this is quite a theoretical theme, so please just learn this theory because it's very important. Thank you for listening.